Toodyay is a popular day trip from Perth, especially during the spring and early summer months. The town has many beautiful heritage buildings and is set in the picturesque Avon Valley. There are many attractions in the area, which was recognised as having great tourism potential as early as the 1920s. Toodyay is classified as a historic town by the National Trust. The area was, and remains, an important agricultural zone. Tourism is now also a major factor in the region's economy, and there are a number of farm stays and bed and breakfasts dotted throughout this attractive countryside. There are several scenic drives in the area, but if you'd like to leave your car at home, there's always the Avon link that arrives from Midland on a regular schedule. The first European to explore the area was Ensign Robert Dale. He led an expedition there in 1831. There seems to be no image of Dale left on record, but he did leave behind some of the earliest images of Western Australia via the paintings he left behind. A location for the town site was set aside in 1836, and buildings began to appear soon afterwards. A police barracks was constructed in 1842, with the town site being formally surveyed in 1849. The first town site was found to be very flood prone, and it was said that the Aborigines even joked that kangaroos got bogged in the mud there. A new town site was surveyed in 1860 and gazetted the following year. The town was named Newcastle in honour of the Secretary of State for the Colonies, the Duke of Newcastle. The original site, still referred to as Toodyay, contained a few buildings, but by 1910 they had all been demolished. There was some confusion between Newcastle in the eastern states and Newcastle in WA, so finally in 1910 the new site was renamed Toodyay. The name is thought to derive from the Aboriginal word Dooji, which means place of plenty. Another possible source for the name is an Aboriginal woman called Toodyay, who, with her husband Kundibang, accompanied Dale on his expedition in 1831. There are also other theories about the origins of the name, but the only thing we know for certain is that nobody really knows where it came from. The jail at Toodyay once held Moondyne Joe. Joe was a bushranger of some repute who escaped captivity on a number of occasions. Other outlaws who haunted the district included James Lilly and Michael Nolan. On the 8th of November 1860, Lilly's bushranging career came to an end at Horton's Inn. This could be the same place that Moondyne Joe was also captured. Lilly had come to the inn and threatened the innkeeper, who sensibly did nothing to antagonise the armed criminal. Instead, he plied him with alcohol, until Lilly passed out. The law was quickly summoned, and after a short struggle, Lilly was safely locked up again. When the explorer Ernest Giles arrived in town, after his expedition that crossed the Great Victoria Desert, he made the following note in his diary. "We were received under a triumphal arch, and the chairman presented us with an address. We were then conducted to a sumptuous banquet. Near the conclusion, the chairman rose to propose our healths, etc. He then gratified us by speaking disparagingly of us and our journey, and said he didn't see what we wanted to come over here for they had plenty of explorers of their own, etc. This was something like getting a hostile native spear stuck in one's body." Relations between sandgropers and eastern staters have always been a bit prickly, but we think this is probably a bit harsh after such an arduous journey. Thankfully, Toodyay is a lot more welcoming to visitors from interstate today. Relations with the local Aboriginal tribes could also be described as prickly. And after the spearing of Peter Chidlow and Edward Jones, their land grant was taken up by J.T. Cook. The Aborigines who had committed the murder were still in the area, and a request was made for protection to be made available in the form of police troopers. The Aborigines then bailed up 2 shepherds who were in the employ of a Mr. Whalen. The Aborigines took some wheat and then returned the following day in greater numbers. By this time the troopers had arrived, and a melee ensued inside the shepherd's hut. Several natives were shot. Their bodies were buried near the doorway of the hut, and due to the superstitious nature of the tribes, they stayed away from the site from that time on, much to the relief of the shepherds. Toodyay was a difficult place to get to in the early years, especially in the winter months, when rains closed the track to Midland, and goods had to be transported via York. This led to excessive freight charges that were said to rise up to £25 a tonne. This was an incredible amount at the time, and was 800% more than bringing freight from England all the way to Australia. The result of this was that the settlers who lived in Toodyay were forced to make items such as furniture locally, or to do without. Over the Christmas-New Year period, settlers from the Avon Valley would usually try to be in Perth, both to take produce to market and to resupply. This was one of the few times of the year where people got to socialise and relax. Connor's Mill was built for Daniel Connor around 1870 by George Hassell. In 1917, the mill was converted into a power station for the town. After a fire destroyed all the internal machinery in 1921, a gas power plant was installed. The powerhouse closed in 1955, and the mill fell into disrepair. In 1975, the restoration of the building began. The mill now demonstrates the milling process with working machinery. When Northam was selected as the terminus for the railway to the goldfields, Toodyay went into a long period of decline. As early as 1885, businesses had been closing up and moving away. But as the goldfields developed, there was a new surge of activity. Even so, it was Northam that won the fight for supremacy, and Toodyay slipped into a role as a quiet backwater. The narrow gauge railway arrived in 1887 and continued to service the area until 1966, when it was replaced by the standard gauge line. The first railway line had only been a branch line that left the main railway at Clackline, came through Toodyay and on to Bolgart and eventually to Myling. In 1966, the line was completely relaid, and the main eastern line now came straight through Toodyay. This has resulted in a significant amount of noise pollution from the regular train movements through the area.